9. And it's been stormy political weather for France over the last year. Earlier this week, President Emmanuel Macron made his New Year's greetings speech to the nation, and in it he looked back on a year of political challenges, admitting for the first time that the decision to call a snap election in June had brought about more confusion than clarity. Many will remember 2024 as one of France's deepest political and democratic crises in modern history. Trying to unpick the turmoil that painted the year, the France-based journalist Jamie Smith-Maillet sent us this report.
You might say it's been a year of political boom and bust, where boom is more or less the sound of France's political institutions near imploding. Across the channel, 2024 will go down in the history books as the year with 4 prime ministers, the shortest ever campaign period for general elections of just 3 weeks, the shortest lived PM of just 3 months, and, it has been argued, the deepest political crisis the country has faced in the Fifth Republic. Looking back, much of the turmoil began in June at the EU elections.
Of the European parliamentary elections, which kicked off on Thursday the 6th, today sees the majority of the bloc's 27 nations head to the polls.
And it's a moment of celebration for many far-right political parties in Europe. Results of the EU parliamentary elections show they've made historic gains in Germany, Austria and Italy.
Polls had long suggested that the far-right would do well across the bloc. Despite there being 27 individual elections, a trend was beginning to appear, as the Belgian academic and expert in the far-right, Nathalie Brack, told me in June.
So the context of crisis is a fertile ground for far-right parties, as they can mobilize on this sense of crisis, and they also feed on discontent and resentment. And if people are not happy, then it feeds radical ideas and radical parties.
On the 9th of June, when France went to the polls, I met with The Guardian journalist John Henley in Paris.
The European elections have traditionally, almost since their inception, served as a kind of low-cost opportunity for voters to give the government of the moment a good kicking. But I think that, generally speaking, if you look at the polls for the next presidential elections in France in 2027, they're also showing Marine Le Pen ahead of pretty much every possible rival at the moment.
That night, the exit polls showed the far-right National Rally coming out top, gaining 30 of the 81 seats attributed to France. A blow for Macron's centrist Renaissance Party, which triggered an internal shake-up.
Where the country's president, Emmanuel Macron, has called a snap election after Marine Le Pen's party finished first.
The snap election, dissolving the National Assembly, was a move that shocked even his own party.
I am very afraid, for France, but also for Europe.
And maybe it's the right time at a moment where we see as we speak so many people voting on the far right.
And on the streets in Paris the following morning, mixed messages on this decision and what it might mean.
Was Emmanuel Macron right to call the snap election?
I understand it from a political point of view, but I don't think it's the right choice right now.
He doesn't want to accept the defeat, so he tries to keep control.
Perhaps something he was seeking, but what would ensue was greater instability. If the general election results were to mirror the EU elections, the National Assembly could indeed have a majority far-right government of the National Rally for the first time in history. There were calls from the exiting PM Gabriel Attal to block out the far right.
Our objective is clear, to prevent the National Rally from having an absolute majority in the second round, from dominating.
And on the left, it was argued, however, that there was an opportunity for a left-leaning alliance to come together. Mélanie Vogel is a French senator for the Greens.
There is a strong will to mobilize, not only against the far right, but in favor of a movement that can bring better policies to France.
The two-round majority system in France means the projected final outcome can be quite different from the first round. The results then made international headlines.
Just as we've reached the end of an election campaign, France is firmly in the middle of one.
The far right have made large gains in the first round of the country's snap parliamentary election.
But a week later, strategic voting saw the far right reduced and the National Assembly split into 3 blocks of more or less the same size. There was no clear majority for a government to be formed, making the task of selecting the next Prime Minister challenging. As the president's job, he decided to call a truce period for other distractions that summer.
Love. It makes you do crazy things. Welcome to the city of love.
A summer of Olympic love, triumph and diversion from politics. But in September, when it was back to school, it was also back to parliamentary benches. And after a 2-month wait...
Now, Michel Barnier is starting work as France's new Prime Minister. 2 months after the country's snap elections ended in political deadlock.
A 73-year-old veteran politician, better known in the UK as the EU Commission key Brexit negotiator. The French press called him Monsieur Brexit. Not for his political values, he's a staunch Europhile and a right-wing politician. His appointment meant further upset, notably in the left ranks, feeling snubbed, having won most seats in June. Writing in The Guardian, French columnist Rocaillot Diallo, spoken here by an actress, questioned why Macron was still trying to dictate who governed the nation.
In the name of institutional stability, Macron suggested that the possibility of a centrist coalition should be explored. This was a shocking and dangerous statement, breathtaking arrogance and disregard for our democratic processes. The president is not only supposed to be above party politics, but the separation of powers should not allow him to intervene in the formation of majorities.
But on agenda, Barnier's first hurdle would be the 2025 budget and the challenging task of tackling France's crippling debt. But negotiations proved fruitless, and gradually his demise was on the table.
Government is on the brink of collapse after the Prime Minister, Michel Barnier, forced his controversial budget through Parliament without a vote.
A no-confidence vote brought down the government for the first time in more than 60 years.
The no-confidence vote ended Barnier's time in office after only 3 months in the job, plummeting France back into the state of turmoil known in the summer. But polls showed public concern. The French rolling news channel BFM TV revealed that over 60% of the French people were worried or frustrated about the political deadlock.
All politicians, when elected, go big-headed, lose the plot, and just think about themselves.
We should create the Sixth Republic. I think it's been needed for 10 years now. We should break with the Fifth Republic that was written by de Gaulle for him alone.
And not long before Christmas, a new man was named for the job.
President Emmanuel Macron has named the centrist leader François Bayrou as France's next Prime Minister, with a handover ceremony currently taking place.
François Bayrou from the centrist Modem party is well respected across numerous political parties from left to right. But fragility still looms. His cabinet, appointed on Christmas Eve, critics have said, is a reshuffle of the last one. Macron has called for stability and hopes that concessions will be made. But the hard left, France Unbowed, have already said that they'll lodge another vote of no confidence on the 16th of January. France leaves behind 2024, it is fair to say, with greater polarisation, division, instability and an overall sense of disarray than 12 months prior. With the geopolitical challenges that the world will face from the beginning of the new year, it is hard to say how things will pan out. One thing is sure, its country's politics will continue to make the headlines in and outside of France.
That is Jamie Smith-Maillet reporting there.
So, how will France face the next year with its many political challenges? Our producer Brian Lindsay has been speaking to one